Welcome again to this second webinar of the series about the application of behavioral sciences to tourism sustainability. Thank you very much for being here, so numerous. Today we have as a guest speaker Milena Nikolova, which is an expert on human behavior and travel and tourism, who will guide us into a journey about the application of behavioral knowledge to the most current tourism challenges. But before, I would like to take a couple of minutes to present you the project thanks to which we are able to have this webinar today. This webinar is part of a European project called BEST, Behavior Smart Community for Tourism. It is a project funded by Erasmus Plus that aims to create a community of practice about the application of behavioral sciences to tourism, and also to share the most current knowledge about this topic. The idea is to raise awareness on the potential of behavioral approaches to address the issues that are most current when we talk about tourism sustainability. We are very proud to, as Avitem, to lead this project and to be partnered with the Behavioral Insights team and Behavior Smart, who are two of the leading organizations in Europe and in the world about the applied behavioral sciences. Just also before to start, I would like to remind you that this webinar is being translated into French. So for those of you who would like to listen to the French version, you just have to click on the button interpretation on the bottom of your window and click on the French channel, or otherwise you can stay on the English or original channel. If you would like to ask questions or to make comments, you can use the chat. We will have some time at the end of the webinar to take your questions. So really do not hesitate to interact with us during this hour and a half. Also about the genesis of this project, it was born from the idea that today we need new models to address tourism sustainability. And we think that knowing better human behavior and having a more human-centered approach can really help to address the challenges of the sector. So that's why we have built this cycle of webinars. So we are showing that on screen right now. With BIT and Behavior Smart, we are going to guide you through this journey. We have started in the end of September with Claire Dale and Alice Escan from Behavioral Insights team. We have given an overview of the human behavior, how the human brain works when we take decisions. And BIT has also given a lot of examples, practical examples about the application of this knowledge into public policies or services and programs for the common good. Today, so with Milena, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into specific tourism-related challenges and with a lot of examples also at destination level. On the 19th of January, 2023, we are going to go into the methodological aspect. So how to make it possible, how to design and implement interventions that can work. So if you are interested into how does it work, you are very much invited to join this third webinar. And in the fourth webinar in March, we are looking at the future, and we are looking at the future challenges of tourism and how behavioral sciences can really play a role into addressing them. We also invite you to follow the LinkedIn channel, the Twitter channel of the project, and to subscribe to our newsletter or to our mailing list, because with this mailing list you will receive all the updates, all the registration, the recording of this webinar, and also the registration form for the following one. So please do not hesitate to join our online community, also by subscribing to the LinkedIn group that is the virtual space for this community of practice. So without further ado, I will give the floor to Milena to introduce herself and guide us through this journey. Thank you, Milena.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for the fantastic introduction. And thank you all for joining us today. I will start today's talk, or actually continue our webinar with a quick summary from last time, when our esteemed colleagues from the Behavioral Insights team gave you an overview of the basic principles that we use in behavioral sciences in order to benefit on policy level or on strategic programming level from more precise understanding of how human decision-making and human actions unfold. So just to do a quick overview of the key points that were made last time, one of the key theoretical foundations of contemporary application of behavioral sciences leans on the theory of the two-system decision-making that we use in different contexts as human beings. System one is our impatient, childlike, automatic, intuitive system, which looks to invest the least amount of effort in order to arrive at the decision. This is the decision-making system that we usually engage for quick, fast decisions that do not involve much analysis of the pros and cons of different systems. This analysis is the specialization of our system two, which engages when we are employing our brain power in acquiring a new skill, in engaging in reflective processes, when we seek to actually synthesize and look available information in a way that allows us to have an analytical perspective, and that leads us to identifying really the most beneficial option. This is our more rational decision-making system. So in many situations, one system or the other takes over the process, which is why we often observe situations where, in particular context, human beings make decisions that seem to deviate from what would be the rational decision path. And by understanding these dual system, we know that this is not exactly deviation from rationality, but it's actually employment of different decision-making techniques. The challenge that we see in different societal and socioeconomic contexts, including the context that we'll focus on today, tourism sustainability, is that many of the systems in our societies are designed based on assumptions that relate to system one decision-making. And in the cases when we actually do employ our system one, this works very well. But we know that in contemporary context, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, we are increasingly employing our system two, which seeks to make a quick decision, which uses shortcuts, and in many cases automates decision making. And this is when we actually see a clash between the design of the context in which we are and the actual decision-making or the goal or the expectation that we have about the specific behavior. We're going to dive deeper into how all of this relates to traveler behavior and what are the situations in which much of the choices are actually channeled through system 1 and what are the situations in which system 2 might be active. We will also understand how that specifically relates to sustainability, which has become more and more prominent over the last years. So let's look at how we can apply knowledge from behavioral sciences to the context of tourism more specifically. Last time you heard numerous examples about how behavioral thinking, behavioral knowledge has been applied to policy and non-policy contexts from other sectors. So let's look specifically at tourism. I want to start with an analogy from another industry in order to bring together some of the points that were made during our first webinar and connect that to the type of thinking that we think is meaningful in the context of tourism sustainability. The industry that I want to look at is the automotive industry. Now, some of you might remember or have seen from images that have come across, that automobiles several decades ago looked something like this on the left. And in addition to the fact that there was no automation and obviously much less comfort than the image on the right, which reflects what the contemporary car would look like, there's something very important that has also dramatically changed. Alongside the comfort and obvious design improvements, contemporary cars employ a lot of technology and design features, which are there, part of the immediate context in which the driving behavior unfolds, in order to eliminate or at least minimize the likelihood of a human mistake, the likelihood of such undesired deviation from rational decision-making, because we know that a mistake behind the wheel could lead to outcomes which are socially undesirable. What are the types of mistakes, or why do we make mistakes when we are behind the wheel? The reality is that we sometimes don't know. We don't have enough information. We might not be familiar with the road, or we might have missed a sign, a warning sign. In other cases, it might be that we are distracted either by the child in the back seat or by something that happens in the immediate surrounding. In other cases, we make poor judgments, or in certain situations, our senses might not perform perfectly. So maybe we look around and we see that there are no cars, but we fail to notice a woman on a bicycle. In all these cases, we make mistakes which are specific to the driving moment, and they're not necessarily associated with our quality as drivers or our lack of understanding of what is important and what is not. But contemporary car features help us eliminate or lower the likelihood that we will engage in a traffic accident, or that we'll make a judgment which deviates from what is safe behavior. So for example, if we forget to put our safety belt on, the car will make an unpleasant noise, which within seconds will make us put the belt on. If we get distracted, as I mentioned a moment ago, we will hear again a sound signal from the car. And if we continue to not act or not hit the brake, the car will most likely automatically hit the brake on our behalf. So all of these examples show how automobile design or the car industry has employed this realistic understanding of how people think, act, and choose behind the wheel, and how human behavior unfolds in the driving context in order to eliminate the mistakes that we make on the road. Now, of course, if we are realistic, we understand that the optimization, the safety optimization from a human behavior point of view that car designs employ today is not what gets us to the 100% safety. There's also traffic regulations and traffic enforcement. There's also road infrastructure and quality of the signage. So there's multiple factors which contribute to maximizing safety. But that immediate changing of the immediate context in which the driving behavior unfolds and incorporating of design solutions which are there to eliminate undesired mistakes takes care of a significant share of improving safety. So the suggestion that I want to make with this analogy at the beginning is that we can apply this same approach and employing design optimizations in travel sustainability in order to make sustainability a more likely outcome in traveler decision making. So moving on to some examples as to what does it mean to be similarly realistic about human behavior in the context of travel as the automobile industry has done it. The first thing is when we look at understanding and being smart about human behavior is to understand traveler behavior, specifically in the context of sustainability. That means understanding how people relate to sustainability. Why do they act or not act towards sustainability? And what are the barriers and the incentives that influence their choices in that respect? The second part of being smart about human behavior in the context of travel sustainability is based on our understanding of how traveler behavior unfolds and really happens, to design interventions, sustainability programs, policies that align with how human behavior really works, with how people really perceive information, react to sustainability, and make decisions related to sustainability. So these are the two parts of the employment of behavioral sciences in the context of travel sustainability. Now, what does that mean? In order to be smart about changing behavior towards sustainable practices, we need to start with better understanding of why sustainability is difficult from a human behavior perspective. We have sufficient knowledge from behavioral sciences in order to understand what might be the reasons or what are actually the reasons why the standard approaches that we have taken towards improving sustainability performance in tourism have not worked. Let's look at some of them. The first one is that when people travel, naturally, they prioritize the experience and the maximization of experience. So imagine you're visiting France for your honeymoon, and naturally at every moment that you have to choose between getting more of your experience and contributing to climate action, you're going to prioritize the first, simply because this is why you're there. So even if on value level, you're completely aligned with sustainability priorities and you believe that all of us have a role to play, you will still, during this special holiday and during your stay at this special destination, you're going to always prioritize the experience. So this is the first reason why in many cases, travelers, even if they're aware of what is good or bad in terms of sustainability, they don't necessarily follow that. A second important aspect or force that guides traveler behavior is the release of behavioral controls. Here is what I mean. So most of us, when we are at home during a regular week, we would follow some principles of exercising regularly, of sticking to a certain diet, avoiding wine during the weekdays, avoiding sweets, again, probably during the week and so on. But when we go on holiday, we actually release these controls. We probably will be less disciplined about getting up early and doing our regular jog. We will definitely be less strict about not drinking wine on a weekday, especially if we are in a destination which is known for good wine. Not only would we probably take a glass of wine every day, we would probably do so also with our lunch. We would do the same with desserts and many other aspects of our diet. So this control releasing behavior is absolutely the same when it comes to sustainability. So even if at home, we're very strict about recycling, about using energy in a smart way, when we are on holiday, we're likely to release these controls. So another reason why conventional approaches towards sustainability and simply providing information and education does not work. The third thing that we know from behavioral sciences, specifically about traveler behavior, is that even though we are observing increased awareness about sustainability, the majority of the travelers on the market still perceive sustainability and climate action as overwhelming, as a topic that is in direct conflict with the state of being on holiday, with the state of being in leisure mode. So even if they have information or they are exposed to information about sustainability, they reject that because they feel that this is not something to worry about during their holiday. They give themselves an excuse and a way out of this. In many cases, we also know that travelers, simply because they're new to the destination and its specifics, might be unaware of what is the best or the most appropriate decision or choice in terms of sustainability, simply because they don't have enough information about the context. And in many cases, or actually in an increasing share of cases, we automate, we find ourselves in situations where our sustainability choices are based on automated decisions. The reason that an increasing share of decisions are actually channeled through that system one, which is automatic and impatient and shortcut driven, is simply the fact that decision-making has become much more on the go than it has been in the past. So if in the past, the majority of the decisions about where we're going to stay, what kind of activities we will engage in, where we are going to sleep, and who we're going to hire as our guide, many of these decisions were made before departure at the computer screen or while reading different brochures or written materials. Today, our pocket devices allow us to make many of these decisions on the go, which means that we have seen a shift of the purchase decision-making patterns, where in the past, much of the decision-making was made at the anticipation stage in a static, more rational, more system two mode. And today, many of the decisions are actually made when we are already on the go, and we are more likely to be channeling the decision-making through our system one, which means that much of what leaves our footprint is actually shortcut driven and automated. Now, the reason why it's so important to start with understanding what are the forces of that shape human behavior in the context of travel and sustainability behavior is that it helps us be realistic about the factors that explain why sustainability has been so difficult to adopt so far. And it also points at what are the right directions for influencing behavior in the desired directions. So it's good that to have a better reflection of these factors and understand that when we talk about the difficulties with sustainable travel, it's not about values and poor morals, but it's more about human nature and how human nature works and operates in the context of travel and leisure mode. So in that sense, we understand that the classical awareness and education approaches we have taken so far are less likely to work simply because providing information and educating travelers about sustainability options does not change their behavior towards sustainable consumption simply because it is not a matter of information or education. It is a matter of the forces that we just reviewed, as well as other forces, which make education and information just a small part of the solution. And that's why providing information and education alone does not lead to the reduction of undesired impacts. Understanding what are the forces that shape sustainable tourism behavior and being realistic about them helps us outline a different path. And that path suggests that the chance towards changing behavior and making it more sustainable in the context of travel is by eliminating or minimizing unsustainable options and incorporating sustainability in the design in order to automate sustainable traveler behavior and thus reduce undesired impacts in a very, very similar manner as it was employed by the automotive industry. Now, this approach does not eliminate the need for information and education. On the contrary, it's education and information still have a role to play, but they actually are more effective post factum. They become more effective when we inform the traveler that after the fact, after they have already engaged in sustainable behavior, to signal to them that they have and use that as an opportunity to educate. In many cases, using that order of efforts actually ends up also boosting the satisfaction of travelers and the likelihood that next time they will be more informed and more mindful in their sustainability choices. So, in essence, being realistic about human behavior means to understand how human behavior unfolds in the context of sustainability in ways that helps us be more realistic with what are the paths, the tactics, and the programs that can actually work and modify patterns towards our desires and our sustainability goals. In fact, what we know about human behavior today, also from the employment of behavioral tactics in other contexts, we know that it makes more sense to place focus on changing the context in which traveler behavior unfolds in order to make the changes towards the patterns that are desired and that can optimize the footprint of today's tourism industry. And we also, knowing what we know from behavioral sciences, we should also be open about the fact that if we are really serious about changing traveler behavior, we need to work towards a context that makes sustainability easy and effortless, that makes sustainability the default option when that's possible, and that makes sustainability non-negotiable or completely automatic. Now, in the following section, I want to dive deeper into some examples and illustrations of how behavioral sciences have already been employed in different business or service design or program design contexts in order to optimize sustainability and employ some of the principles that I just summarized. So the case studies that I will share with you over the next few slides suggest or demonstrate how being realistic about human behavior leads to sustainability programs and tactics that influence behavior by encouraging or incentivizing travelers and sometimes employees to be more responsible, by making sustainability the easiest or the automatic, the most natural option, by making sustainability the most appealing, the most attractive or irresistible option, and by automating sustainability behavior, sometimes by eliminating non-sustainable alternatives altogether. So let's start with one of the probably most popular examples or cases from our industry. It comes from Virgin Atlantic. Virgin Atlantic being one of the airlines with ambitions to be leading the way in terms of sustainability. A few years back, initiated an effort to encourage pilots to use fuel efficiency tactics during flights that would optimize also the carbon footprint of flights. And even though pilots were trained and all their manuals included very specific instructions on how to employ these tactics, and even though they had all the information available and it wouldn't necessarily mean additional effort on the job, Virgin Atlantic actually found it very difficult to engage pilots in acting on these tactics. At that point, they engaged in the task or in the addressing of the challenge, a team of behavioral scientists who came up with very easy easy and low investment tactics that allowed the influence on pilot behavior. So 3 tactics were employed. The first one is just monitoring and generating monthly summaries or accounts of the fuel efficiency behavior of each pilot and sending that by email at the end of each month. So this action increased the sense that pilots efficiency behavior is being monitored, and that alone increased the likelihood that they will employ at least one of the fuel efficiency tactics by 50%. The second tactic that was employed was, in addition to that monthly summary that pilots started receiving that made them aware of their performance and the fact that their fuel efficiency behavior is being monitored by their employer, was the ability to set one's own efficiency target. So a little bit of gamification there, setting your own target for how much better you would perform next month. And that added another 9 to 20% increase in the likelihood that at least one of the available fuel efficiency techniques would be employed. Behavioral scientists, also the behavioral team, tested also rewards for achieving your targets. But interestingly, the rewards themselves actually did not contribute much to increase in the desired behavior. It was the gamification and the sense of being observed that actually generated the desired change. And you see here some of the numbers which were registered as a result of this program. The effort was executed over 8 months, and not only did the airline achieve significant improvements in its carbon footprint, but it actually also optimized the cost efficiency of its flights. So it's considered to be a good example of how smart application of behavioral tactics can actually influence the likelihood that employees would align with sustainability goals and with improvement of sustainability operations on everyday level. Another example comes from destination level. One of the most important aims or goals of destinations in many cases is to increase the economic footprint of the local tourism economy by incentivizing or increasing demand for local products. And in many cases, the messaging that's being used by destination invites guests to support local producers and to buy local because it's the right thing to do. From a behavioral point of view, and in the context of what we already know about human behavior and how people really make decisions when they're in leisure mode, we know that this is probably not the most effective way to work. So in the past, when we have done work in this space, we have actually flipped the approach to increasing demand for local by helping make local offerings more appealing and more attractive. In other words, increasing the demand for them by making the local product the more appealing product compared to the imported product. And you'll see some practical examples also on company level a little bit later in the presentation. So things such as improving descriptions and product presentation, providing information that personalizes the link between the product and the producer, the farmer that is from the local area, as well as using pricing as a tactic that increases the perception for quality and value, are all effective ways that help us optimize local buying. Another example on how how behavioral thinking has been employed effectively on the destination level comes from a fantastic project which you may have heard about and read about a couple of years ago. It comes from Tuscany region, where a smart approach or a creative approach towards alleviating pressure from hotspots, specifically Florence, that suffers from over-tourism, and balancing the spread of tourism flows in order to address areas that experience under-tourism, was undertaken with a creative approach of spreading the artifacts that would normally be concentrated in Florence and spreading them at different parts of the region. And that means that automatically the motivation that draws flows and concentrates them in one location is actually spread and deconcentrates the tourism flow by incentivizing travelers to visit different parts of the destination and by encouraging exploration of different parts of the destination. So understanding that the main draw is a certain collection leads to creative solutions about how this concentration can actually be flipped into a solution that spreads and optimizes the presence of tourism flows in more even manners across the destination. Another example from a destination level comes from Norway. A few years back, the food industry in Norway organized itself to address the problem with food waste. And based on estimations, which many of you have probably already seen, they wanted to minimize the 30% of wasted food, which is proven to be the loss in the hospitality industry. And deeper understanding of the reasons why so much food is wasted led to the understanding that there are several behavioral factors that lead to that significant problem. One is the fact that many people, both on the client side, but also workers in the kitchen, in the restaurants, in catering companies, actually do not understand and do not really realize how much food is wasted. They know that this is a problem of the industry, but since it remains vague, they don't really understand how much it is. So the first solution was to raise awareness and make people, both workers and clients, aware of how significant the problem is, so that it couldn't be rejected and it couldn't be ignored. So what you see on the left is part of the program that was launched, which aimed to demonstrate in very clear and visible terms the share of food that was wasted. Such visuals with the wide variety of meals or food items were placed both in customer areas around buffets, restaurants, and so on, but also in kitchen areas where it kept kitchen workers constantly aware of the problem and prevented the problem from being ignored. The second important aspect, of course, was measurement, and that would allow, again, to have specific indicators, but also to track progress. And then, of course, employing or providing easy and relevant tools and tactics that were possible to employ by kitchen workers and by food service providers in order to really change behavior and minimize losses. You can see some of the effects that were achieved in just a few years. And these are efforts which continue even to the day, and which show how an integrated effort could actually combine different techniques, but could also employ the benefits of understanding the behavioral factors that also mix into the problem and the challenge that's being targeted. Another example comes from Helsinki. This is a program that was launched a little bit before the pandemic, Think Sustainably. Helsinki, as one of the ambitious European cities in terms of sustainability and sustainability performance, understood that traveler behavior and also the leisure behavior of its own residents can be changed or can be encouraged only if sustainable choices are made easy. So as a result of SMART project that employed the power of contemporary technology, Helsinki developed an application which was designed as visitor and residents service platform, allowing people in a very easy, intuitive manner to find providers of anything from accommodation to attraction to what to do on a weekend, bike rental, or anything that you might need as an urban operator or as an urban service within a city. But also made that platform or based that platform on sustainability principles. So providers who were achieving higher sustainability performance would receive better visibility, would be presented to clients in a very appealing way, and would therefore receive more business or more visibility on the platform. On the back end of this, of course, the city worked with local businesses in order to enable them to first employ sustainability standards, but also receive support, training, sometimes financing in order to optimize their operations and actually improve their performance along the way. So in essence, by developing a platform which seemingly alleviates or makes decision-making from a consumer perspective easy, they actually incorporate sustainability principles in the design and make sustainability an easy option, essentially normalizing it for both residents and guests. And at the same time, incentivize businesses in order to strive for improved sustainability performance. So this is a great example of how destination marketing with technology and sustainability performance is combined and powered by good understanding of how can we influence behavior both on the consumer end but also on the supplier side. So really a great project. Now, I gave you examples both from business level as well as destination level, and I want to take the final minutes of today's talk before engaging in the discussion with you to show you an example that proves that businesses and destinations really have complementary roles to play in changing sustainability behavior, because behavior and sustainable choices relate not only to what travelers will choose and how they will behave, but more so in how travelers within the company, within tourism companies will behave, and how all of them together will contribute to an improved performance of the entire tourism ecosystem. So on one side, travel businesses have the opportunity to change the context or influence the context of traveler behavior by altering or adjusting the design of their services. So, for example, they could minimize the use of plastics by eliminating plastics from their service altogether, or by incentivizing or making travelers or their guests making it easy to access tap water and to use reusable bottles and other means of avoiding plastics. So this is something that a travel business can do in order to influence the behavior of travelers. But just like we heard with some of the examples early, sometimes we need to change the behavior of businesses themselves. In many cases, we have businesses that have no objective reason not to be plastics free or not to lower their carbon or not to use less energy. But in many cases, they are influenced by status quo bias or by misperceptions that taking away options is bad for their customers, or simply because of hassle factors or perceived cost factors. So they procrastinate and don't engage in sustainability improvements. So in the same way that businesses can influence the traveler behavior, destination authorities can influence the behavior of businesses and incentivize them to move towards optimizing their operations in a faster manner. So that's why we talk about the fact that in a destination ecosystem, destination authorities can influence behavioral patterns about travelers and businesses can influence the behavior of their collaborators across the supply chain, as well as of their clients. I want to take a few more moments to tell you about a story, to share with you a case study, which reveals how a destination authority and businesses within the local tourism economy can work together and employ behavior change techniques in order to optimize the sustainability footprint of the local tourism industry. This case study comes from one of our favorite parts of the world, Ticino region, which is the Italian part of Switzerland. And the efforts that Ticino Tourism has undertaken seek to support individual businesses with behavior change techniques in order to accelerate even further the sustainability efforts that are already in place, as a way of ensuring that behavior change is used in a relevant and effective way. The work involved using a group of pilot businesses that would test and really ensure that the techniques that were selected are relevant for the local context and really produce the desired effect. And then these techniques would be rolled out to the larger ecosystem, to the rest of the tourism businesses. So I will share with you some examples from the work that was done by these pilot businesses who were bold enough to experiment and to pilot test some of these techniques. One group of tactics sought to make sustainability effortless and therefore the most likely choice of visitors in the Ticino region and their clients. One of the pilot companies was Campo Felice Camping Complex. This is not only the largest camping complex in Ticino region, but actually in the entire Switzerland. And one of the things that the leadership wanted to improve as part of its ongoing sustainability efforts was actually to increase the consumption of tap water on the premises of the camping complex, because as you can imagine, as a camping, there were tap water outlets everywhere. Swiss water is fantastic, tasty, natural, clean. So there's absolutely no reason why guests would go for bottled water, but they actually did. And what we discovered was that one of the main challenges was that not that people were extremely fond of using single-use plastics, but they just perceived that bottled water was the easiest and more available option around the complex. So with Campo Felice, the solution was relatively easy and fun, understanding that we need to overcome the sense that bottled water is the more prevalent and easy solution. We needed to flip that. So what we did was actually use a nice, friendly visual to make all water taps around the complex visible. You can see that their natural design is a little bit gray. They kind of blend in the setting. So it's normal that people don't see them and don't perceive them as places where they can refill their bottle. So by developing this visual and by marking all taps around the complex, we suddenly made them visible, and we increased the perception that actually tap water is easier and more available than bottled water, which you actually have to go and buy from the shop and carry back to your accommodation. The idea is also, as a next step, to make reusable water bottles widely available, so that this also increases the ease of consuming tap water and makes it almost irrelevant and irrelevant to use and go and buy bottled water. A second example comes from Hotel Internazionale in Bellinzona, one of the oldest hotels with great traditions in high quality service and great ambitions to be a responsible player in the local tourism economy. So for Hotel Internazionale, it was really important to improve to minimize the negative footprint on the environment and improve the desired footprint on the local economy. So for example, some of the efforts that the hotel employed is to place emphasis on local products, make local products more visible and more appealing, both in the breakfast menu, buffet, by signaling which products are local with a simple and very clear signaling logo like this, as well as to discourage guests from using anything single use. So again, in a similar manner, such as Campo Felice, they would have caraffes and glasses in every room to encourage people to drink water from the tap and not bring any plastic bottles, including to introduce reusable shopping bags for people who visit them and who want to go shopping, either buy some of the fantastic wine to take home or for something else. In many cases, these people would go shopping and bring back a reusable, a single-use paper or plastic bag, which they use for less than 15 or 20 minutes and then throw away. So by providing reusable shopping bags as a service, this is something that eliminates. So these are just a couple of examples of the types of techniques that are employed by these hotels. I will move on to give you some of the other examples from Ticino. The second group of tactics that were employed by these pilot businesses sought to make sustainability part of the experience and actually engage travelers in understanding and being mindful about the sustainability nature of their experience. One of the companies that employed this technique was Monte Tamaro Adventure Park. This is a fantastic facility with a lot of experiences and attractions. And one of the things that was challenging for them was that Monte Tamaro had made huge investments in its technology and infrastructure in order to optimize the sustainability performance of its park. But this remained completely invisible to the guests because they don't understand what is the energy solution that's being employed to power some of the attractions. They don't understand what are the techniques that are used in order to make sure that all of the installations actually have zero impact on the natural environment and so on and so forth. So the solution that they employed was actually to bring up sustainability throughout the experience. Normally guests would spend half a day or a full day in the park engaging in different activities. So the first idea was to identify all of the sustainability efforts that were initiated by the park, and then to bring them up at different points of the experience. So for example, in the food and beverage points, you would see very brief notes that the food and beverage operations have made an effort to eliminate the use of any single-use plastic. So every everything that is there is plastics free. At the adventure park, you would see a brief note that brings up the fact that all of the installations have actually used a method of installation that prevents any damage on trees. In the parking lot, you will see a note bringing up the fact that all energy is 100% renewable, and so on and so forth. So this bite-sized information, which comes up in different points throughout the park, and relates and brings up a specific action or specific effort that is relevant to the specific place or location in which you are at. So this technique, in essence, keeps sustainability top of mind, and it makes travelers aware that not only are they having a fun and engaging experience, but it's actually to a large extent guilt-free. So as I mentioned at the beginning, a lot of the work that was done by businesses on the individual level happens in the context of efforts that are at the destination level. Ticino Tourism is probably one of the most ambitious destinations in terms of changing behavior on destination level when it comes to mobility patterns. And that's through their Ticino Ticket program. Ticino Ticket was conceived as a program when the destination and the local politicians took on the challenge of figuring out how they could make use public transport, the use of public transportation so irresistible that all travelers and visitors in the destination would actually prefer that. And the reason that this was so important was that with the increase of tourism, they were starting to experience traffic jams and problems on the road. They also wanted to encourage slower travel and slower tourism, to promote more even spread throughout the region, and of course, lower carbon footprint. Those of you who know Switzerland and Ticino know that they have fantastic train system and fantastic public transit system. So in that sense, the natural thing was to make travelers use that system rather than rent cars and contribute to road traffic. And the approach that was taken was actually to grant every guest who stays at a local hotel or a camping or a hostel with a free travel pass that would allow them to get on any public transportation, and that would also grant them discounts to key attractions throughout the entire region. And I know it sounds very drastic to have free public transportation, but it actually was achieved through very smart flipping of funding resources. So actually, the majority of the funding came from tourist tax. So travelers still are paying to a large extent for this transportation. Some of the funds come from local and regional public funding sources, and of course, sponsorship and support from the private sector. But in essence, what this allowed was to package an offer at the destination in a way that made it completely irresistible and impossible to resist, and that dramatically changed the mobility patterns at the destination. So today, the majority of travelers actually use only public transportation, because you have to be really mad to pass on this opportunity and to actually spend additional resources and engage in traffic jams and complications with driving around. They also visit many more attractions and actually go to much more remote areas in the destination, and they really enjoy the fact that they have easy access to the public transit system. So a very powerful example of how a destination with some smart thinking and playing and redesign of financing and organizational factors can actually produce an offer that changes dramatically mobility patterns at the destination level. So with all of this, I want to just bring back in conclusion several key points. You saw that some of the changes that I talked about are seemingly small and low investment. But the reality is that if we ground our actions on realistic understanding of how human behavior really works and how people really respond to sustainability, we can use relatively small changes to contribute to a change of norms. If we all incorporate small and smart changes along the entire supply chain and along the entire destination, we actually end up changing the behavioral context and to change the overall behavior of travelers within our destination, which is what the automobile industry did, as we illustrated at the beginning. So many small and smart changes coordinated across many businesses can actually end up changing the context. What this change of context can do is that it can actually shift the need from finding the right travelers who are willing to spend more, who are willing to make an effort to be more responsible, to actually making the context, the experience context in travel such that most travelers will end up being the right travelers. Because remember, many decisions go through system one. If we create the context that makes sustainability easier or automatic, that means that most travelers will actually make the right decisions or the desirable decisions. The other thing that I want to mention in conclusion, something that was mentioned also last time in our first webinar, is that while most of us find nudges and small changes in choice design interesting and fun, using behavioral sciences in a strategic way to power sustainability transformation goes much beyond that. And I think that the example, the Ticino Ticket program from Ticino is a good illustration of how it actually can be used at policy and programming level. And one last point that I want to make, because we are talking about scale and smart employment of behavioral sciences at a scale, I want to say that travel tech, which increasingly has a special role in the future of how the travel industry will unfold, also has a very important role in employing knowledge about human behavior and making sustainability part of the norm of doing business. Because some of the smart changes that we illustrated today are actually, can actually dramatically change behavior at scale if one or two or three of the biggest technology companies in travel employ them and use them in the way that they present information or the way that they design their services. So this is a special challenge to the travel tech industry. So with this, I want to thank you, and then I'm open to questions and discussion.
Thank you so much, Milena, for this this insightful presentation. So many interesting examples. Thank you very much. While we leave some time for people to digest all this information, please really, to all of you, feel free to ask questions to Milena, either on the chat, or if you would like, you can also maybe ask to speak, and I can give you the permission to speak into the webinar. While we wait for the first ones to ask questions, the experience of Ticino Ticket made me think about a very interesting experience in Occitanie region. I see there are some of the attendees that are from that region. Occitanie makes a lot of efforts as well to promote rail travel, and they have designed a sort of offer around rail travel that is very interesting. It's called Occitanie Rail Tour. And it makes me think of a similar effort as Ticino Ticket, because it basically makes the train the most appealing and easy option to travel across the territory of Occitanie. And what I liked about this experience is that they have organized the rail offer as with lines that also are called with names that recall the territory features. So in a way, it makes you think of a sort of like in a metro network where the lines have a name. And also it reminds the identity of the different parts of the territory. So I think it's a very interesting example also for us to keep in mind. I also maybe have a question regarding the experience in for example, in Campo Felice. I know that you were involved in this project. Did you find any difficulties in the beginning to have the staff from Campo Felice sensitized about the interest to apply behavioral approaches? Because this is often something that is quite new and people do not really know what does it mean. It may create some barriers there. How did you manage?
So absolutely, one of the interesting thing when we start employing these behavioral approaches is that we can understand that some of the barriers, we automatically think that they're on the side of travelers, but that's not always the case. So, for example, in Campo Felice, we had a very aware team who was eager to contribute and actually to make a change. They just weren't quite clear on what was making people stick to bottled water when tap water was actually available everywhere. But in other cases, when we have worked with businesses in similar context, we see that sometimes they would be less hesitant to make a change because of the assumption that they have that actually taking away bottled water as an option lowers the quality or deprives customers from an option. While in reality, people stick with bottled water not because they're fond of plastics, but because this is the easiest option. So if you make the alternative easy enough, then they will actually switch. So sometimes making businesses understand that they're not going to lower the quality, or taking away one option does not necessarily mean that you're lowering the quality of the service, is actually a challenge. In other cases, we have seen an additional barrier on the side of employees when it comes to actually making an operational change. One of my favorite examples comes from changing towels in hotels. We know that one of the easy examples of employing the power of defaults is actually when we switch from the default options of changing towels. Instead of asking people to tell us whether they want the towel change or not, we simply switch the default and we say, okay, by default, we don't change towels. If you really insist on having a daily change, you can call us and we'll make the change. And in many places where hotels move to that practice, housekeeping doesn't change their behavior. So it's not the traveler behavior that we need to influence, but it's actually the housekeeping. So we need to incentivize them. In some cases, doing something similar like what Virgin Atlantic did, making employees aware that actually such performance, for example, wash load is being monitored and that the company expects or the leadership expects to see lowering of that, is something that can be a nudge for housekeeping to change their behavior. So sometimes it's both the employees, the company owners, just as much as the travelers that we need to change and to influence.
Yes, thank you very much for this. I'm also like I now reading questions from Alice. I will read it out loud in English. I didn't get very well the examples about the tourist flow management in the destinations. Could you please illustrate again what can we concretely do in order to spread people around in the destinations through the use of nudge?
Yes, so the example that I mentioned from Tuscany was actually a creative strategy that was relevant for employment there. In their case, they actually spread art items that were concentrated in a single gallery. They spread them throughout the destination. So art that could be seen only in one location, actually you had to travel to different places throughout the destination in rural parts of the destination in order to actually see everything that would normally be concentrated in one exhibition. Another way or another popular approach that we use is to change the appeal of less visited spots, or to change the attractiveness of less visited spots, so that we can increase the likelihood that people will want to visit them rather than go to the same hotspot. This is something that has worked well in the Nordics, where presenting a new itinerary as curated by locals, or as revealing the only spot where you can see the sun in a certain way, or the river in a certain way, or such certain colors, actually increases the uptake of the new itinerary, and then respectively lowers the most frequently used tours. In some places. This is a similar approach that we also use to lower demand for higher footprint boat trips, or trips that involve consumption of more fuel, and so on and so forth.
Thank you very much. And it's true that the example that you made about the changing towels and sensitizing the staff, it also reminds us the importance of testing the interventions, because without a proper testing, you will never be able to anticipate these types of barriers that you could encounter in a context, but maybe not in another, of course. I will now read another question from Florian Chardon, which is in French, so I will read it in French. L'essentiel du tourisme est concentré sur la saison estivale. Cela est bien évidemment dû au calendrier des vacances scolaires. Mais selon votre approche, comment être plus efficace dans nos communications pour étaler le tourisme sur les ailes de saison? Avez-vous des exemples en tête?
This is a brilliant question. Thank you so much for that. I was recently part of some discussions about the future of tourism and specifically how climate change is actually going to influence, or is expected to influence, future travel patterns. And this is especially relevant to us here in Europe, as we suffered from really disastrous heat waves. And the expectation is that as these natural patterns will, weather patterns will continue, will persist in the future, that we will see summer destinations become really unbearable in the summer. But that actually relates to what you're bringing up, and that's the current social design of our societies and of our annual calendar. So for me, one of the directions in which we will need to explore change in patterns in our society. This goes much beyond influencing demand or traveler desires. We will need to be moving towards adjusted social designs where the school year and holidays are actually reorganized and probably spread in a different way throughout the year. Because with time, if changing patterns will continue in the way that they seem to be continuing, we will see that summer holidays or beach holidays will be only possible in these shoulder seasons today, and absolutely impossible and damaging for human health in these warmer summer seasons. So this is a complicated issue, but I expect that in some forward-looking countries, we will begin seeing discussions that relate to change of the social design. Unfortunately, in many cases, these topics are also extremely political, and they relate to several sectors, including education, including social services. So it's not going to be an easy transition, but it's certainly a very, very interesting topic. And it's something that at least I am starting to see come up in strategic thinking when it comes about the future of tourism.
Yes, absolutely, and it's so true. We are also seeing this becoming part of the debate more and more. This is going to be a systemic change, but I think that there are smart ways to start already thinking about this from now. It makes me think of, for example, the experiments in some businesses. They are testing the 4 days week at work, which is proving to be to have the same effects in terms of productivity from the staff, but it changes very much the actual structure. It's easier to implement this in a business, of course, than in a system as a whole. But we can have interesting examples coming from pilot actors that can show them that it can work. Maybe I have a last comment. Also, of course, you can to all the attendees that are still with us. Please don't hesitate to ask other questions, or even to make testimonies about your own experiences. You may have some. I know that some of you may have something to share that is interesting. I wanted to share an interesting piece of research that is being done. We've discovered it recently with Carla last week. We have the chance to listen from a presentation from a researcher that is working on this concept of last chance tourism. And so he's working specifically on those people who go to see the glaciers, the ice. I don't know how to call it in English, but the glaciers in before they disappear. And this is a very interesting thing to observe, because we would expect that the profile of the tourists that go to see these glaciers would be maybe a more traditional profile of a tourist that goes there to see what it looks like. Basically, the research that has been done shows that the majority of these visitors are visitors that declare to be aware of the urgency to tackle climate change, but this doesn't prevent them to take a plane to go to see these glaciers. This is one observation. Another observation is that when you dive a little bit deeper into the motivations of these travelers, you can find out very interesting motivations, like, for example, the fact that to witness a change in the environment, to be able to then transfer this knowledge to other people. So this, I think, is a good opportunity to use these motivations as levers to adapt our communication in a destination, or maybe to use these places as a memorial opportunity. In any case, it was for us very interesting, and I know that Carla has shared in the chat links to this concept of last chance tourism, and the researcher that shared this. I know I saw him in the list of participants, but I think he left before. But yes, this is another interesting topic that I think it relates also with behavior.
Absolutely. There were many calls in the responsible travel journalism circles to actually stop publishing these last chance destinations and to stop promoting these last chance destinations, because from a behavioral point of view, they activate the fear from losing. And so actually people who, again, they are people who generally fall in the responsible traveler segments or groups or profiles, they still go and actually are motivated to contribute to the footprint that is causing the damage in order to avoid missing out and missing on the opportunity to see these places. So among responsible travel media, this was a big issue, and today it's really considered to be a very undesirable practice, let's say, to promote such places.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I think it will be part of the future conversations and debates about the future of tourism.
Yeah.
So if there are not other questions from the audience, in any case, I would like to remind that the recording will be made available, and also the presentation from Milena. While you registered to the webinar, you have also hopefully ticked the box to agree to join our mailing list. And through this, you will receive all this information. And we will also prepare a visual summary, like the one that we did for the first webinar, that will be part of the package, let's say, related to this webinar. So I would like really to thank again Milena so much for all the knowledge that she shares with us. This is so precious. We are really proud to work with Behavior Smart and with you and with BIT that is following as well the webinar. So I also thank our interpreters and our co-hosts, the team that organized this webinar. We will give then the next appointment for our cycle of webinars will be the 19th of January at 3 p.m. Central European Time, where with the BIT, we will go a little bit in detail on how to do it. What is the good methodologies? What are the good methodologies? We will select some tourism-related challenges that we could focus on. Really don't hesitate to join us for the third webinar in January. Thanks so much again for your time, and we will stay in touch on social media. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.